One.
Bonsoir tout le monde. Good evening, everybody. Bienvenue à cette séance de conseil tenue en huis clos. Je suis assisté ce soir par les conseillers, la conseillère Elizabeth Yulin, la conseillère Maria Torres, la conseillère Colleen Feeney et le conseiller Dino Mazzoni. Aussi, je suis rejoint par notre greffier, Maître Claude Gilbert, et notre chargée de communication, Madame Elizabeth Roy. Good evening, everybody. Welcome. We're having this meeting in closed chambers tonight because of the ministerial decree. I'm joined tonight by our councillors Elizabeth Yulin, Maria Torres, Colleen Feeney, and Dino Mazzoni, as well as our town clerk, Claude Gilbert, and our person responsible for communications, Miss Elizabeth Roy. So if I could have, je peux avoir quelqu'un pour faire l'ouverture de la séance, s'il vous plaît.
Oui, Monsieur le maire, je propose d'ouvrir la séance.
Merci, le conseiller Mazzoni. Je peux voir l'appui, s'il vous plaît.
Oui, je l'appuie.
Merci, la conseillère Yulin. Tout en faveur, s'il vous plaît.
Oui.
Oui.
Merci. Adoption de l'ordre du jour, s'il vous plaît.
Oui, Monsieur le maire, je propose d'adopter l'ordre du jour de la séance ordinaire le 30 août 2021, tel que présenté.
Merci, la conseillère Torres. Je peux voir l'appui, s'il vous plaît.
Oui, je l'appuie.
Merci, la conseillère Yulin. Tout en faveur, s'il vous plaît.
Oui.
Oui. Oui.
Merci. L'approbation des procès-verbaux, s'il vous plaît.
Oui, Monsieur le maire, je propose d'approuver les procès-verbaux des séances du conseil tenues aux dates suivantes. Séance ordinaire le 28 juin 2021. Séance spéciale le 8 juillet 2021. Séance spéciale du 22 juillet 2021. Séance spéciale du 5 août 2021.
Merci, la conseillère Yulin. Je peux voir l'appui, s'il vous plaît.
Oui, je l'appuie.
Merci, la conseillère Feeney. Tout en faveur, s'il vous plaît.
Oui.
Oui.
Merci. Just to give everybody a little bit of an update, the 28th of June was our regular council meeting. The special council meeting on the 8th of July was for SPAIP issues, a minor exemption request, and for the roof contract to redo the roof at Public Works. The special meeting of 22nd of July was for a minor exemption request, and the special meeting for the 5th of August was for SPAIP and for first reading of the draft, the first reading of the draft bylaws. We're going to move right on to the mayor's report. Welcome to our regular council meeting. We will answer questions from the residents that have been submitted today until 3 p.m. today on any topic. In the second question period, we will take questions pertaining to the agenda submitted via our website during the meeting. Bienvenue à notre réunion régulière du conseil municipal. Nous répondrons aux questions des résidents soumis jusqu'à 15 heures aujourd'hui sur n'importe quel sujet. Au cours de la deuxième période de questions, nous répondrons aux questions relatives à l'ordre du jour soumis via notre site web lors de cette réunion. There were many questions and concerns raised regarding some proposed zoning changes that were presented to council. The purpose of the most contentious change was an overall plan by council to evaluate whether we could expand our tax base by looking at town land. The only real town undeveloped land remaining are the parking lots. So we have mandated them to be evaluated. And the first one that we had evaluated was Strathern Milner. To be clear, we have not put them for sale. We do not have any buyers or developers interested. We have not made any decisions regarding zoning changes. The zoning changes were proposed to us by professionals. Our job is then to consult with our residents before adopting any changes. And that's where we are, or where we were. After seeing the concerns raised, it became evident that we could not constructively and effectively consult with our residents via some virtual or hybrid system. Therefore, we have put the consultation and zoning changes on hold until such time as we can consult with the residents in person. At that point, after receiving your comments and concerns, and including a petition that we received today, we will see how the zoning changes can be modified. De nombreuses questions et préoccupations ont été soulevées concernant certains changements de zonage proposés qui ont été présentés au Conseil. Le but du changement litigieux était un plan global du Conseil pour évaluer si nous pouvions élargir notre assiette fiscale en examinant tous les terrains de la ville. Les seuls vrais terrains restants de la ville non aménagés sont les parkings. Nous avons donc mandaté pour les faire évaluer et nous avons commencé avec le lot sur Strathern Milne. Pour être clair, nous ne les avons pas mis en vente, nous n'avons pas acheteurs-développeurs intéressés et nous n'avons pas pris de décision concernant les changements de zonage. Les changements de zonage ont été proposés par des professionnels. Notre travail comme conseil consiste ensuite à consulter nos résidents avant d'adopter les changements. Et c'est là que nous sommes, où nous étions. Après avoir vu les préoccupations soulevées, il est devenu évident que nous ne pouvions pas consulter nos résidents d'une manière constructive et efficace via un système virtuel ou hybride. Par conséquent, nous avons suspendu la consultation et les changements de zonage jusqu'à ce que nous puissions consulter les résidents en personne. À ce stade, après avoir reçu vos commentaires et préoccupations, incluant une pétition qui a été déposée aujourd'hui, nous verrons comment les changements de zonage peuvent être modifiés. As we have in the past, most recently with the demolition request on Easton Broughton, we effectively consult our population and orient ourselves accordingly. Comme nous l'avons fait par le passé, plus récemment avec la demande de démolition sur Easton Broughton, nous consultons d'une manière efficace notre population et nous nous orientons en conséquence. On a personal note, I missed the last council meeting in June due to some health issues that seemed to come back again at the beginning of August and this past week. Luckily, I'm in the excellent care of some physicians and nurses that happen to be Montreal-Ouest residents. Hopefully, all of this will be a bad memory after this week. To them, I offer my thanks again publicly. I think we should all be proud of having such extremely gifted and caring people as our neighbors. Stay safe and stay healthy. Merci. Thank you. If we can get back on the regular get back now, we go right to the council's report. So we're going to start with seat number 4, Councilor Maria Torres, reporting on matters pertaining to the environment, public works, and buildings.
Good evening, everybody. Bonsoir à tous. As usual, I will recap the activities undertaken by the Public Works and Environmental Department during the months of July and August. I will start with Public Works. Asphalting was done throughout the whole area on Westminster. 5 manholes catch basins were fully rebuilt and the road was subsequently asphalted. Sorry, my computer jumped. All catch basins across town were cleaned. 400 linear feet of sidewalk sections were rebuilt across town. These sections were located along Easton, Edinburgh, Hudson, Radcliffe, Curzon, and Brook North. A new cedar hedge was planted at the dog run. 50 new trees were planted at residences across town. That means that the public part of section of these residences. Currently, Public Works is continuing with tree trimming interventions. All regular maintenance to the town's gardens, green areas, park, and public buildings were done. The reconstruction of Fenwick is still an ongoing project. Now I'm going to move on to the environment. Every year in the spring and in the fall, the town starts the process of planting trees in the public area in front of Montreal-West residences. Starting tomorrow, 31 letters will be delivered to different households across town, informing them of this process and asking them to choose one of the 3 tree species that have been found suitable for that specific space. If you're one of those residents, please select the tree and let Public Works know as soon as possible so they can order the trees. Or if you prefer, Public Works can select it for you. It is of utmost importance that we continue with this tree project. Our last 2 tree inventories indicate that we have a large number of old trees close to the end of their life cycle, and a deficit in young trees that could potentially replace the older ones. The inventory also indicates that the town doesn't have the minimum tree canopy coverage that is necessary to offset serious issues such as climate change. To be able to contribute in a positive way to global warming, it is necessary that we increase the town's tree canopy from 26% to 40%. At this point, I would like to thank all the residents who have requested to have trees planted in front of their house, as this project can only succeed if we, the town and residents, work together. Please let us know if you're interested in having a public tree planted in the public sector of your house. You can contact Public Works at Montréal-Ouest.ca or call them at 514-485-8597. That's all from me today. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to send me an email at mtorres@montreal-west.ca. And have a nice evening and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Torres. Merci, la conseillère Torres. Reporting from seat number 1 on matters pertaining to public security and special projects fundraising, Councillor Dino Mazzoli.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you all Montreal West residents joining us here tonight. Here is my council report for both of July and August 2021 with respect to the Public Security Department and departmental activity. The PSOs conducted 3 traffic counts, speed and volume surveys to follow up on 3 separate traffic calming requests from our residents. They helped in distributing demolition notices and other important notices to our residents. The PSOs also coordinated some night closures in the municipal parking lots to allow for line painting, and they also assisted recreation for this year's Canada Day greetings. With respect to SPVM crime or police crime stats for the month of June of 2021, there were no reported crimes for the month of June. For July of 2021, the police actually did report 2 vehicle thefts and 1 theft from inside a vehicle. And I will simply highlight that for the vehicle thefts, one occurred on July 1st, it was a Honda CRV. Another occurred on July 21st. It was a Jeep Cherokee. These 2 cars, particularly, I've informed myself, are very high value, I guess, theft objects, if you will, amongst the crime community. So be very wary, keep your cars locked, hopefully put some lighting around the home if you don't have it to keep would-be thieves at bay. And if, God forbid, something should happen to your property or to your person, please file a police report. In terms of some just notable calls, I'd like to highlight one specifically. Again, around on August the 7th, while on patrol at around 8 o'clock at night, one of our patrollers noticed some individuals possibly trying to break into vehicles in the north part of town near Brook and Gardner. The patroller called for the police and followed the individuals from a distance. The police arrived, they identified the individuals, but there was not enough to charge them of any criminal wrongdoing. But they were each issued a ticket for trespassing under our municipal bylaws because they were actually on the resident's property without that person's permission. Be mindful, again, keep your eyes and ears open. If you see something you don't think makes sense, trust your gut, call the PSOs, call the police, report it. If perhaps I'm stating the obvious here, summer is over. All 3 of our schools are back in session as of tomorrow, and our PSOs and the police will be patrolling and will be visible around our schools in order to ensure the safety of our students and that parking regulations are respected. As with every school year, we have new parents that will be bringing their children to school for the first time in our town, and some of them may not be aware of the parking restrictions around these schools. Our PSOs will be on site to inform these parents and to enforce the parking rules. We ask all of you to be extra vigilant, have patience, and be respectful of the rules when driving through school zones, and to refrain from parking on crosswalks or in no stopping, no parking zones when dropping off children. One last note, and it's just specific to Anthony, who is one of our PSOs. And in fact, I just wanted to confirm a piece of information. Anthony Paluca. I never referred to him by his last name, so I didn't know it was a Paluca. He is one of our PSOs who's actually on his way out, and he's going to work for the CBSA, the Canada Border Services Agency. It speaks to a lot of the caliber of the people that we have working in our public security department that Anthony would be chosen for this job. We're really sad to see him go. Everybody found him to be a very affable, polite, and very resourceful individual. And so we're happy and proud of him. We wish him the very best in his new position. In terms of if you have any questions, I am active on social media, as some of you may know. You can certainly also reach me on my cell phone at 514-949-3055. And I wish all of you a very safe end of this month and the beginning of a new and prosperous school year for your children. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mazzoni. Reporting from seat number 2 on matters pertaining to communications, recreation, and culture, Councillor Elizabeth Yulin.
Thank you very much. Good evening. Bonsoir à tous. So I'm pleased to report that our second COVID summer, and hopefully our last, we were able to offer a lot more programming than in 2020. We ran a full roster of community center programs, and our popular day camp served over 250 Montreal-West children, all within COVID guidelines. The pool was also open this year, with residents enjoying a host of programs such as diving and swimming lessons and swim team, aquafit, life-saving courses. This was also in addition to the many lap and family swim spots that were available. Our outdoor fitness programs were also very well attended. These classes and more will be available indoors in the fall, and some will still be available online. Registration for fall programming began on August 23rd. In special events, though Canada Day and La Fête Nationale weren't exactly what they used to be, we did manage to keep the festivities alive with pop-up entertainment throughout the town. Hopefully you got to enjoy some of that. Contests and a noisy council caravan on Canada Day. And we wanted to wish everybody a happy holiday, and hopefully we'll get to do that all in person next July. While our weekly summer events had to be cut back, of course, due to gathering restrictions, we were still able to have 80 participants in the family duathlon and 50 in the new murder mystery game. Also held this season were the annual town chase and several other outdoor concerts and a film viewing. Coming up on September 11th, there'll be a chamber music concert in Davies Park and a Mandela Bollywood dance on September 12th. And residents can register for these events for free on Amelia online. We'll be opening up the arena for hockey and skating at the end of September, unless government directives change. That's, of course, always a possibility. This is particularly exciting since actually we haven't been able to host any hockey or team sports since March 2020. The online artist showcase submissions deadline is September 24th. So if you're an artist, you might want to submit to that. The theme this time is Remembrance, and that's tying in with our Cenotaf's 100th anniversary. Switching quickly to, pardon me, the communications portfolio. The department's been working largely on matters related to new COVID directives, summer activities, and infrastructure work. And finally, I'd like to welcome back our communications manager, Elizabeth Roy, who has now come back from maternity leave. In fact, this is actually her first day back. So she's right into the fire here. And so thank you, Elizabeth. I know you're online somewhere there in the background for stepping up. We really missed you, and we're happy to have you back. I would like to say, though, a thank you to Manon Schla for doing such a fine job in the interim. So we'll miss Manon, but we're very happy to have Elizabeth Roy back. If you have any questions for me, there is a second question period where you can ask. And of course, I can always be contacted through the Montreal-West website at any point. So thanks very much. That's it for me.
Thank you very much, Councillor Yulin. And finally, reporting from seat number 3 on matters pertaining to urban planning, finance, administration, and human resources, Councillor Colleen Feeney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and bonsoir tout le monde. Hello, everyone. I'll start off with finance and administration. A reminder that the second installment of your property tax was due this past Friday, August the 27th. As of this morning, 93% of you have paid your taxes in full. And to accommodate residents wishing to pay their second installment, the Town Hall reception desk was open on August 26th, 27th, from 10 to 2 p.m. After this, the Finance Department started on the sale of the process of the sale for non-payment of taxes. The first notice for unpaid 2019 taxes was sent out August the 17th, and the second one was sent out today. The residents have until September the 7th to contact the town in order to avoid the public notice for sale of the property. And on another type of tax, the dates for the 2021 water tax will be, the mailing out of the cards to the residents will be this week, September the 2nd. You have to return them by September the 24th. Then the water tax bills will be calculated and mailed out on October 25th with a due date of November 25th. The readings can be submitted online, and we always say if you are having difficulty reading your water meter, residents can attach a photo of their meter and send it in. And we do encourage everybody to use the online form. These dates that I've just mentioned will also be published in an upcoming e-bulletin. And I wanted to mention as well, if you do not submit your reading online by phone or by returning the card or anything, the amount will be estimated and you will be charged $50 as a result. Okay. Other stuff in finance and admin is the work has started on the 2021 forecasts and the 2022 budget. With disbursements tonight, we had quite a few disbursements because we were dealing with 2 months of expenditures, and the disbursements for the 2 months were $1,476,000. And I always like to give residents an idea of where their money has gone. As usual, a large portion of it, about a third of it actually, went to deductions at source and benefits for employees, as it is the employees are the largest single expenditure that we do have. Another almost third went to infrastructure and consultants regarding infrastructure. The main expenditures there were about $294,000, partial bill for the Avon resurfacing, $55,000 for sidewalks, consultants, $15,000 for Fenwick consultants, other consultants for related to the environment and the recreation center, $27,000 and $16,000, and we paid another $36,000 in line marking. Those were the different and more unusual expenses. As well, we paid our second quote-part, our portion of the MMC, that is the global aglo amount, the Metropolitan Council amount, and that was $57,000. Of course, there was more expenses for the pool and for day camp and that sort of stuff, but that is to be expected. Garbage expenditures, as usual, were always high. They were also over $50,000. So that's the main expenses for this past month. Moving on to urban planning. 73 permits were issued in July and August for various projects, mainly home renovations, decks, and driveways. The next meeting of PAC will be September the 15th, and the submissions for that are due on September the 1st. After that, it'll be September 29th, with the submissions due September 15th. And I will note again for those who might be submitting something for the first time, since the town hall offices are closed to the public, the permit applications can only be made online through the town's website, and the procedure is explained under urban planning. Okay. Although the mayor gave an excellent resume of the zoning bylaw and our changes there, I just wanted to remind everybody that in fact, it's part of our strategic financial plan and also part of our MATA policy that we wanted to identify areas for potential future development. And that was to help the town with a couple of things: our overall tax base, our types of inventory of our housing, etc. So that was kind of the basis for that, for which we got a consultant to work. And now, as we know, these are on hold for now, but that was this did not kind of come really out of the blue. It was part of that long-term strategy plan. And finally, on the seniors committee, the senior COVID-19 outreach program has ended. The volunteers were contacted and were notified, and they notified the seniors in their charge. Most were very, very pleased with the help that they had received. And so we now have something in place should we need to rely on it again in the future. Meadow also had another meeting on July the 26th, and we're continuing to work on our priorities and timelines of our action plan. So that's it for my portfolios. If you have any questions, please feel free, or I can always be reached by email. Thank you very much. Have a good night. Stay healthy.
Thank you very much, Councillor Feeney. Thank you all, councillors, for your reports this evening. We're going to move right to the first question period. As we mentioned, the first question period could be on any matter pertaining on any matter at all, and they needed to be submitted by 3 p.m. today. So the first question comes from Mr. Julian Feldman at 36 Campbell Avenue. Will the town consider joining other municipalities across North America which restrict the use of small gas engines, for example, lawnmowers, trimmers, leaf blowers, that typically do not respect the town's own noise bylaws, and instead to promote the use of inexpensive, quieter electric small engines? Councillor Torres, if I could ask you to address the question, please.
Yes. Hi, Julian. Thank you for asking these questions. I'm also glad that you included not only the leaf blowers, but lawnmowers and trimmers. Just to let you know, I'm in the process of doing research about all these issues, not only because of the noise, but also about the health and environmental impact. But I'm yet to present my results to council. As soon as we do and make a decision, we'll let everybody know. But we are in the process of doing research, and we would be including in the research the lawnmowers and trimmers and all these other two-stroke engines. Thank you for asking, and I will keep you posted.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Councillor Torres, and thank you for your question, Julian Feldman. Next question comes from Yelena Roy at 21 Curzon. Hello, kids from Little Learners Daycare often visit Davies Park during the day. Unfortunately, there is no public bathroom little kids can have access to. Would it be possible to have access to a bathroom? Thank you. Councillor Yulin, if you could address the question, please.
Sure. Thank you, Yelena, for your question. It's a good question. Unfortunately, now with COVID, our public buildings are closed to the public. And so we are not able to give access to bathrooms in that way, which is too bad because your point is well taken, especially for children. We're hoping that these directives will change as the pandemic winds down. I know it's not looking like that at the moment, but we've got to keep our fingers crossed for that. So hopefully when we can open our public buildings up again to the public, we can make some kind of an arrangement. But for the time being, unfortunately, we're not able to do that for children or other residents. But so I regret to say there's not a way we can do that at the moment. But thank you for your question, Elena. It's a good question.
Thank you very much, Councillor Yulin, and thank you for your question, Elena Roy. Next question, we received questions from 2 residents on the same subject. First question was from Vincent Surette at 14 Rennie, and the second question was from Marlene Cousins at 10 Rennie. So basically the question says, since we're doing work on Fenwick, the whole length of Fenwick, it seemed it would not be such a huge expense to do another 200 meters to cover Rennie. Rennie has had some issues with sewers backing up as well. And they were asking why we could not have included the work on Rennie as well. Basically, Mr. Surette and Ms. Cousins, the answer is because the government has not classified Rennie high enough for us to be getting any kind of grant for it. The reality is if we wanted to include Rennie, we would have to justify it and pay for it ourselves because it would not qualify for any granting. And unfortunately, that's the case. And we've always had to do the work based on the granting we've received. I would love to get rid of our last cement streets where they're also having water breaks and sewer issues. I'm thinking of Brock North and I'm thinking of Strathern. And I'm looking at Strathern, I think there's just like 1 block left that hasn't been done yet. But we can't do it until we actually qualify for grants, until it's high enough up on the priorities to qualify for grants. So unfortunately, we couldn't include, even though you think that it would make sense to continue doing Rennie, we would not have qualified for grants and would have come out of our pocket completely. So thank you for your questions, Vincent Surette and Marlene Cousins. Next question comes from Eileen O'Reilly. It's a 2-part question. Eileen O'Reilly at 139 Percival Avenue. 1, thank you for the service of replacing damaged recycling or composting bins. However, both time I required replacements, it was because of damaged lids. What happens to the discarded bins? I searched everywhere to just have a replacement lid to avoid throwing out that huge piece of plastic. Is it possible in the future to have replacement lids only? And second, I'm very concerned about the rezoning of the parking lot at the corner of Strathern and Milner for many reasons: local shopping congestion, removal of town service. I hope the town does not proceed with this. So if I could ask Councillor Torres to respond to the first part of the question, please.
Yes, thank you, Eileen, for your question. I'm going to have to double check this information, but as far as I know or can remember, when your compost bin gets damaged, we pick it up and bring you a new one. That one does get the lid replaced. A lot of times the damage, you're right, is either the lid or the hatch, and they are replaceable. Once again, I have to confirm this information, but I do believe that there's not thrown into the garbage. They are repaired somewhere and then reused. Thank you for asking.
Thank you very much, Councillor Torres. And to answer the second part of your question, Mr. Riley, as we stated before, we've put the consultation process and the rezoning process, we've put it all on hold until we have a chance to be in the room together where your concerns can be expressed directly. We can answer questions directly. We can ask questions directly. And so we can make an informed decision about how to modify these proposed changes. So thank you very much for your question, Eileen O'Reilly. We're going to move on now to a question from Mr. Stan Carney at 449 Wolseley Avenue North. Mr. Carney says, can you explain to me why public works employees are hand watering the flower beds around Town Hall and the Cenotaph? Paying $25 to $30 an hour seems ridiculous. Why hasn't the administration put in an irrigation system that would do the job and free up public works employees who could do better things elsewhere? If I could ask Councillor Torres to answer the question, please.
Yes, gladly. Every year, Public Works hire a couple of students to help Bruce, who's our gardener or official gardener, to not only to plant plants, but also to mulch, to weed, and to water. The reason we don't put an irrigation system is we have far too many flower patches. For example, you mentioned the town hall and the Cenotaph. Well, the town hall itself had 4 different flower patches. We do not water the grass, only the flowers. So we hire these 2 students and they water all the flowers everywhere in town, including all the parks, but also on the curb extensions. We also have a lot of pots on the streets and on Westminster that they have flowers and trees. They go and water this as well. And last, they also help us watering all the newly planted trees, which this year so far we did 50, and now we're going to do 30. So our garden needs help, and there are students hired for the summer, and that's what they do. That's their job. Our regular employees do not do this, except of course Bruce, that sometimes he does the town hall. But these are students helping us out to maintain the beautiful flowers and parks across town.
Thank you very much, Councillor Torres, and thank you for your question, Mr. Carney. Next question comes from Julian Mazzoni at 49 Parkside. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. I hope you all had an amazing summer break. Is it possible for the town to install 2 water fountains, one at George Booth Park and at Percival Field, since these 2 parks are used mainly during the summer with the camp? And second, does the town have any future plans on having a wheeled garbage collection instead of an old-fashioned garbage, instead of the old-fashioned garbage cans, which sometimes litter the sidewalks and streets, especially when it's windy? Thanks and have a good day. Councillor Yulin, if you could address the questions, please.
Sure, I'll take the first question about the water fountains. Julian, it's a great suggestion. In fact, I would highly advocate that we have water fountains in all of our parks. And in fact, this is something that we've discussed on council before, and we just need to make sure it gets into the budget for the next time round. It is a little bit complicated sometimes putting in these fountains depending on where the water access is, but certainly when we have a playground, we should have a fountain there. Percival Park is a little bit different because that actually doesn't belong to the town. That field, it belongs to the school. Elizabeth Ballantyne School, the school board. So that may be a different kind of a challenge. But certainly you mentioned George Booth Park, and that's really a good idea. And we'll make sure that it gets on the agenda for the next time we're planning any kind of work in the parks. The second question had to do with wheeled garbage collection. I could answer that as best I can, or Maria can take that, being public works. I'm not sure.
Yeah, we'll let Councillor Torres take the question. Thanks for answering the first part, Councillor Yulin.
Sure.
Councillor Torres, if you could take the second question, please.
Hi, Julian. Thank you for asking these questions. You asked if the town has any future plans on having wheeled garbage collection instead of having the old-fashioned. Yes, right now the Environment Department is working on waste management strategy plan. And one of the things that we're looking into is standardize all the garbage cans. So yes, we're looking into it. It's not an immediate thing. We still have to do more research, but it is coming. We'll let you know. And thank you so much. It's a very good suggestion. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Torres, and thank you for your questions, Julian Mazzoni. Next question comes from Judy Kennedy at 151 Strathern North. It's a two-part question. One, has the town ever contemplated banning dryer sheets? Dryer sheets have serious carcinogenic chemicals in them, and the scented ones are even worse. They also take about 2 to 3 years to disintegrate in landfill. There are other products on the market that are reusable. They are called dryer balls, and they're usually unscented. Dryer sheets are not necessary. The greener you can be, the better. And second, what do I do when there is a massive tree in the backyard that is kitty corner to mine? Half of the tree has no leaves, major power lines. At 158 Westminster North, dangerous. So if I could ask Councillor Torres to address the first part, I'm going to ask Councillor Feeney to address the second part. Go ahead, Councillor Torres.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hi, Judy. After you asked these questions, I did bring it to council. Remember, you asked this question last year, so we discussed it in council. The problem with banning articles like dryer sheets is we have no way to regulate whether people in Montreal use them or not, since they're not buying, most of the time they're not buying it in town. You can bring them from another supermarket, you can bring it from anywhere else. So it is very difficult to regulate, and if we cannot regulate, we can certainly not ban it. However, I think it is a very important point, and I would suggest that for any education campaigns in the future for the Environmental Action Committee or the Environment Department to include it and educate the public. I hope that answers your question, and thank you so much for this suggestion.
Thank you very much, Councillor Torres. And for the second part concerning the tree, Councillor Feeney, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for your question, Judy. Yes, the tree at 158 Westminster North, this is a private tree. The town at the moment, since it's on private property, cannot do anything. And so it is the responsibility of the owner of that lot to have it assessed and cut if necessary. I do have to say that I've been told that the town has been in contact with the owner of that lot and has sent them notices and asked them to deal with it as they find it's dangerous. As of yet, we have not received any cooperation, but I can ask them to try one more time. So I do thank you for your question and hope we're able to resolve this. Thanks.
Councillor Feeney, I'm sorry, I'm just going to ask a question, a clarification. The tree that you're speaking of where the town is interceded, is that not the one further down on Strathern on the empty lot, rather than this tree here that this lady's referring to?
The information I got was, okay, maybe it is. Perhaps that's incorrect information then, yeah. If that is the case, if it's one at 158 Westminster North, and it's a private tree, I know they've checked it out, it is a private tree. In that case, then it really has to be, you have to try to deal with your neighbor on this. If we find it dangerous, we can also try to do as we have done with this other, if I don't have the right information on which lot it is, we can see if we can intercede in any way in that one as well. But it is a private tree, so we can't do anything without the permission of the owner.
Thank you,
but I'll look into it. I'll look into that one then. Okay, okay.
Thank you, Councillor Feeney. And I'm sorry, I
Thank
asked
you.
for the clarification just because we were
No,
discussing the other
because
things before.
this is perhaps, perhaps I had received, maybe I got the wrong information on this one. So we'll check into it for sure, Judy, and I can get back to you on that. Thank you
for your question, Judy Kennedy. Next question comes from Andy Malolepsy at 3321 Brock North. Just curious whether our recycling materials are being recycled or dumped like trash. I asked because there was a CBC interview suggesting that 90% of the recycled material in Canada was being trashed. Mr. Malolepsy, your question was, it's being asked further down as well, so I'll repeat it. I'll answer it now. Even though it may seem that it's picked up by a truck that may be exactly like the garbage truck, it is treated like recycling. The contract calls for it to be taken to a recycling center, not to a landfill. We do not supervise that it actually goes to the landfill, to the recycling center, but that is what the contract calls for. And like I said, some people have raised concern because it looks like it's the garbage truck picking it up, but it is in fact being treated as recycled material rather than going straight to the landfill. Okay, thank you for your question, Mr. Malolepsy. Next question comes from Judy Ganton at 42 Curzon. Regarding the house at 74 Strathern North, the house has been sold but remains uninhabited. 4 rusting cars remain immobilized in the driveways. These are unsightly to say the least. Is there an ordinance governing abandoned vehicles on private property? What steps have been taken to address the situation? Councillor Feeney, if I could ask you to address the question, please.
Yes, and thank you very much for your question, Judy. Indeed, 74 Strathern North is a property that we do know. And we have been in touch with this owner several times in the past. They are not permitted to keep rusting old cars in their driveway. So this is against the law. However, based on the municipal law, we have to give a certain number of notices and see if the person complies before we can do anything on our own as a town. I'm not sure. I know that the property has been sold. I am not sure if the new owner, if it's actually been transferred, but we do have a court judgment. We can see if it applies to the new owner as well, and see what we can do with see whether the property has changed hands. So we'll look into that, but definitely it is not permitted, and definitely we have been in touch with the past owner of 74 Strathern on many occasions related to this. Anyway, thank you very much for your question.
Thank you very much, Councillor Feeney, and thank you for your questions, Judy Ganton. Next question comes from George Halal to Courtney. In light of the latest real estate developments and bylaw change proposals, many of us who reside south of Avon would like reassurance from the mayor regarding his commitment to keeping Brock South on a one-way street going north. Mr. Masella, are you still committed to this promise made on several occasions to residents within the vicinity, despite recent developments and proposals? We would like a definitive yes or no to the answer. To the question. Mr. Halal, my answer remains the same as it's stayed for the past every time you've asked the same question. Yes, we're committed to keeping that a one-way going north rather than any kind of a two-way or something going south. And though we were looking at some bylaw modifications, there are no proposals in front of council for any kind of redevelopment in the area as such. Okay, so I can't be more unequivocal than that. It's yes, we're committed to keeping that a one-way going north. Thank you for your question, Mr. Halal. Next question, it's actually asked by 2 different people. It concerns it's asked by Matthew Sherrard at 139 Brock South and Mr. Robert Piccioni at 155 Brock South. It concerns some change in positioning or some moving of equipment at the old Parmalat or Lactalis plant on Saint Jacques. And the question basically revolves around, even though it's not in Montreal-West territory, our Montreal-West residents on Brock South are affected by what goes on at that plant. And the questions regard, has the town been in touch with the Côte-Neige NDG Council to see if they can, or if they're in accord with this change in positioning of the equipment? Is there anything that we could do to exert some pressure to require them to keep the industrial machinery inside? And have we had any discussions with Lactalis itself? And if not, do we have any plans on addressing the owner of the plant directly? So if I could ask Councillor Mazzoni to answer the questions, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Rob and Matthew, for your questions and your concerns. Obviously, this is something that concerns us, but we need to also put some facts in context here. This is on property that does not belong to the town of Montreal-West, and as such, our bylaws do not extend to these individuals in the sense that we cannot necessarily enforce them vis-a-vis these specific entities or individuals anywhere on any other property other than the town of Montreal-West. What we will do is certainly we're going to have our building inspector reach out specifically to the borough and his counterpart in NDG and see to what extent we can press upon them the concerns that we have, and that certainly you have expressed. And in the same venue, I'd like to also mention, and presumably what the questions that you're asking tonight are a function of having received a notice from us regarding a public consultation meeting that's taking place on September the 8th at 6:30 by way of video conference. I don't necessarily see a link there as to where the video conference will take place, but you could certainly reach out directly to the Côte-des-Neiges Notre Dame de Grâce Borough office, and their number is 514-872-0311, 514-872-0311. And also, like I said, that would have been in the notice that you received. And if you don't have that notice, again, reach out to any one of us and we'll certainly give you that information. But we will make it a point, like I said, to ring the bell from our end to our counterparts in MDG. And you're certainly more than encouraged to let your voices be heard at the same time. The more pressure we can bring to bear, the better. Thank you again, both Rob and Matt. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mazzoni, and thank you for your questions, Matthew Sherrard and Robert Piccioni. Next question comes from Ellen Moore at 122 Percival Avenue. And it's a question, the first part of her question is also asked by Janice Hamilton at 203 Valentine North and Daniel Bouleris at 204 Wolseley North. So the question, first question, what is the town doing to clear up the sewage problem related to the Little St. Pierre River in the Meadowbrook Golf Course? And it's the same question that's being asked in effect by Janice Hamilton and Daniel Bouleris. As I've mentioned in the past, the town has continued to do its work. We've reconstructed streets to ensure that we take care of as many cross connections as possible. We're still working with our subcontractor to do testing of the remaining houses on streets that weren't rebuilt to ensure that the cross connections are identified. And once we have an idea of the size of the problem, we'll find a way to address the situation to make sure that the cross connections are corrected. At the agglomeration, unfortunately, the City of Montreal had to give a contract, they were bound to by the Superior Court, to divert the flow of any kind of storm water that may be contaminated with sewer water into the Little St. Pierre River. And though I expressed my opinion that I was in favor of the river, unfortunately, I had to vote for the contract because the City of Montreal is bound to do that by the Superior Court. Again, as soon as the cross connections between Montreal and Côte-Saint-Luc and Montreal-West, as soon as they're all taken care of, then the water can be rediverted back into the Little St. Pierre River. Thank you for your question, Ellen Moore, Janice Hamilton, and Daniel Bouleris. The second question from Ellen Moore says, what will be done with the current community center building on Westminster when the new sports complex is built? I don't have that answer, Mrs. Moore. I have to be honest with you. We don't have an answer how that building can be repurposed yet. So as soon as we do, we'll start sharing that information, but we have not gone that far to see. That building is old and needs a lot of love to make it functional. And the amount of uses that can take place in that building are relatively limited. But like, as I said, we haven't gone to the point of seeing what can be done. So thank you again for that question. Next question comes from Peter McLean, 150 Westminster, apartment 3. The question I have in regards to the bicycles on Westminster, the bicycles on the sidewalk again. What should I pleaded with you to do something about has never materialized. Would it be possible to put a bicycle deco on the sidewalks? That way people will see it when they're riding, not looking for a non-existent sign. It seems such a small thing to do, just painting shouldn't cost too much of a fortune to implement. Thank you for your time. By the way, my neighbor got clipped too, and we've been talking about this for some time. If I could ask Councillor Mazzoni to address the question, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Peter, for your question. Let me give you some good information here that should make you happy. We will be changing the signage, or adding signage, including painting some no bike riding pictograms on the actual sidewalk ramps around the Westminster area sidewalks in the center of town. And there will also be some information and awareness campaigns starting soon, and the police will also be asked to ticket individuals. This is, by the way, just to be clear, it's a Quebec Highway Safety Code infraction. It's illegal, again, to be very clear, to ride a bicycle on a pedestrian sidewalk. And in terms of your last point, which was kind of like, you just kind of threw it in there, your neighbor got clipped. You may want to have your neighbor go online and fill out a traffic-related report with Station 9, SPVM Station 9. And if you go to the website, it's a very simple form to fill out. And this, again, is important because what it does is it collects information, certainly at one level. The police get to see how much of an issue this really is. And the more of us complain, presumably, of things that happen in the town that need enforcement at the police level, well, then resources get allocated appropriately. So I encourage you to go online, not necessarily just for this one infraction, but anything that is traffic related. You certainly can make a bit of a stink on the SPVM Station 9 website. So I hope that information helps you, Peter. And again, let's hope that this problem starts to regulate itself properly. Again, thank you for your question.
Thank you, Councillor Mazzoni, and thank you for your question, Peter McLean. Next question is from Farah Isa, 307 Promenade Ronald. After questions from our part to inquire whether the town council had licensed the grow up on Ronald Drive due to observation of suspicious activities during day and night, and no forthcoming answers from your part in order to lay to rest fear of an illegal grow up, added to that, when called upon public security of town due to the grow up, it was taken very lightly and no one showed up to check. After inquiring from our security officer, did I find out that yes, it is legally licensed by the town? What is the minimum buffer criteria for residences in our city? Councillor Feeney, if you could address the question, please.
Yes, thank you very much for your question, Farah. Yes, this is a zoning issue. It's an unusual one. We had checked into this some time ago, and we found out, we checked into it legally, and we found out that through the town's law firm that the building owner and the commercial tenants had the proper permits with the SPVM, and that they did have legitimate permits to operate medical marijuana from Health Canada. In addition, they have been operating that in the same location prior to the town amending our bylaws of the zoning bylaw of 2014, which would disallow any such type of action in the future. But at the moment, they do have the acquired rights, and so that is why they're permitted to continue operating. Now, apparently, they also have the correct setbacks, or as you say, buffer zones. I have inquired as to exactly how much that is, and I'm still awaiting a response on that, Farah. So when I get a response on the second half of that, I will get back to you personally. I hope that answers your question. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Feeney, and thank you for your questions, Farah Isa. Next question comes from Tracy Swim, 60 Wolseley North. Could council be so kind to consider providing a simplified description of suggested zoning changes with non-urban planning legal language? I think it's important to notify the community members who are directly affected by any changes affecting where they live. They could have concrete comments about the impact. I'm surprised no information concerning the proposed changes were in the current informer. It was very hard to dig through the email. Why was the information not in the informer? Thank you. Councillor Feeney, please.
Yes, thank you very much for your question, Tracy, and you make very, very good points. Sometimes we put things out there, or our departments put things out there in a kind of a language, whether it's a legalese or urban planningese, something that is more difficult for residents to understand. And so we will endeavor, and believe me, we'll discuss this with the urban planning department and communications to make sure that we do clarify things more for the general public. This is something that, of course, we intended to do at a public consultation. If we were with everybody, that we would have the urban planning expert there with us to exactly explain why the changes and what it meant in terms of height of buildings and floors, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Of course, that is canceled, and it would have been probably not as efficient as we figured out anyway, done virtually. But in the future, I think you're right. We will use more straightforward language in this. As to why it wasn't in the informer, generally when they're just like amendments like this and they're not finalized and that sort of stuff, we have not been putting them in. But I do agree, in a case like this, in the zoning one, it would have been a good idea. Sometimes we, because of the different, because of the schedule of the informer, we often miss it. But I would say that in the future, we will endeavor to put it in the informer and use every other means of communication that we can to inform residents about this. It's certainly not that it was hidden and an e-bulletin was sent out, but I do understand that it wasn't as clear as it could have been. So we'll endeavor to do better in the future. Thanks for your question, Tracy.
Thank you very much, Councillor Feeney, and thank you for your question, Tracy Swim. Next two questions come from Paul Desjardins. Hello, I sent 2 emails to Mayor Masella asking if we could have a second speed bump on our block, Brock South, between Carnarvon and Avon. Most other streets, including Ballantyne South, only one street over from the same block, has 2 speed bumps, shouldn't we? With the increased traffic from the condos and many young children playing on our streets, can we please have a second speed bump installed before tragedy occurs? Thank you, Paul. So, Mr. Desjardins, I asked the public security officer, Lieutenant Dimitrios, to explain to me exactly how it works. The idea is that they're looking to find out what the average speed is for the 85th percentile of cars coming up and down the street. So that's where we're trying to get that between a reasonable number. The Ministry of Transport of Quebec and the Institute for Transport Engineers say that it's almost impossible to get that under 32 kilometers an hour. They're also saying that in a stretch of street like yours, from Carnarvon up to up to Avon, which is 155 meters, they're saying that you need one speed controlling device in that length. We have 2. We have the stop at Carnarvon and we have the speed bump mid-block. So in terms of the results of the studies, in April 2016, with no traffic calming measures, the speed at which 85% of the vehicles traveled was 47.05 kilometers per hour. In July 2016, when we conducted another study after installing only the bollards, we found that V85 speed came down to 36.12. In September 2017, with both speed bumps in place, the abrupt one at Carnarvon and the one mid-block, we found the V85 to be 34.82. And we're at that point where we're getting diminishing returns. But they do want to do another one after the traffic has returned with the school, after traffic has returned to a reasonable amount, so we can get a real picture of what's going on currently. So that answers the questions why something has not been done to date, Mr. Desjardins. Your second question, since the tunnel over the tracks was removed at the bottom of Brock South, and since Highway 20 and the train tracks were moved closer to Montreal-Ouest, is there any reason all the trees that were planted along the tracks starting from St. Anne de Bellevue stopped at the new apartment buildings? Why aren't there any trees or a wall along the fence at the bottom of Brock South to create a barrier and decrease the noise pollution from the highway and tracks? Thank you, Paul Desjardins. Councillor Mazzoni, if you could address that part of the question, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Paul, for your question. To your questions, good questions. So what we're going to do is we're going to have our town clerk, Mr. Gilbert, write to CN to reach out to them and find out what's the story. So hopefully we'll get you that information and maybe you'll see something actually happen there That is outside of our purview, but certainly we will make certain that we follow up with CN. And thank you for pointing that out to us.
Thank you, Councillor Mazzoni, and thank you for your questions, Paul Desjardins. Next questions come from James Mullally, 112 Broughton. Previous questions submitted, but I have not seen them in the minutes. First, recycling is being picked up by the regular garbage trucks with compressors. Is it being recycled or not? I'll just answer that one very clearly. That was the same thing I answered to Mr. Malalepsy. Even though it's being picked up by the same kind of truck, it is being treated as recycled materials. So it is going to a recycling facility rather than to the dump. Second question, why isn't the crosswalk at Westminster and Sherbrooke not plainly indicated with horizontal lines similar to the crosswalk at Westminster Broughton? Councillor Mazzoni, if you could address that, please.
Yeah, so thank you for this question, Mr. Mullally. I've reached out to Dimitrios Georgiou, our public security officer and the head of our traffic and safety committee. And what I've learned, and again, this is something that's come up a few times over, is that part of those two lines that you see across right next to the Pharmaprix along Westminster, that is what we call a corridor. It's actually not, it is a crosswalk, but it's not a protected crosswalk. Part of the EXO plan that we have in that area is that they're going to convert, in fact, that corridor, those two white line corridor, to an actual protected crosswalk with horizontal bars. So that is forthcoming, and hopefully we will put that to bed once and for all. Thank you for your question.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mazzoni, and thank you for your question. Next question, it's a series of 3 people asked the same question. So the questions are from Rebecca Vanderlest at 73 Strathern North, from Anne McLaughlin at 59 Strathern North. Excuse me, 2 people. So the question is, why is the town changing the zoning in the Milner Strathern parking lot for commercial residential development? And is the town planning to allow development, and has the land been sold? As I mentioned in my mayor's report at the beginning, the land has not been sold. We do not have a project in front of us. We do not have a developer that's expressed any interest. The reason for this is that we wanted to get a catalog of available sites in the town if we wanted to redevelopment. We started with Milner Strathern, and because of the questions that were being raised and us feeling that we didn't have a suitable method to interact with our residents, we put the whole thing on hold. When we can have a proper consultation, as I mentioned, when we could have a proper consultation and get the feedback directly from the residents and answer questions and ask questions, then we will start considering what changes we need to make in the proposed zoning bylaw. And if I could just add, whenever you have any questions along this nature, you're much better off to reach out to a councillor, reach out to the administration, rather than trying to get an answer, a real answer on social media. There's 4 councillors and there's a mayor here who are ready to answer the questions. Ask the questions to us. You'll get the real answer rather than believing what people are putting out on social media. Thank you for your questions, Anne McLaughlin and Rebecca Vanderelst. Next question comes to us from Colin Broadhead on 148 Percival. Will the new dedicated bike path along the lower section of Brock be linked eventually to Broughton? And with that in mind, are there any plans to add a dedicated lane for bikes on Broughton from Devil's Hill till de Maisonneuve? With the new bike path along the bottom of the Falaise Saint-Jacques opening soon, only makes sense to allow and promote safe passage for those commuting and exploring through our town on 2 wheels. And the second question, the section of road above Davies Park that borders the north end of the park, why not remove the pavement and add some trees? If I could ask Councillor Yulin to address the questions, please.
Certainly, yes. Thank you very much for your question, Colin. Really good questions. You're quite right about the bike paths. We've got them all around town, and we have been, or were speaking with the agglomeration about their master plan for bike paths, some of which would be going through Montreal-West. My latest information is that in 2019, when we were in discussions with the Aglo about what was going to happen with the bike paths through Montreal-West, that all came to a halt for the pandemic. So there have not been any discussions since March 2020. Hopefully we'll pick that up again, and when we have a little bit less, or the AGLO has a little bit less on its plate with respect to the pandemic, and look for a solution that gets the bike paths incorporated into our town. So that's really the best answer I can give you. Of course, from my perspective, it would be great to have bike paths in town that connect to the other ones, but we need to work with the AGLO's sort of master plan for the whole island before we proceed. Your other question about the dead end at Broughton in Davies Park, well, we do have actually a 4-phase plan for Davies Park, and in the 4th phase, we actually did have plans to green that dead end at Broughton. So we haven't gotten around to that yet. Of course, it costs money every time you do a new renovation, but that was part of our original plan, and a bike path may be incorporated into that as well. So it's on our radar, and we'll get to it as soon as we can budget for it. So thanks very much for your question.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hewlin. If I could just add, in terms of that section of Davies Park, one of the things that's also slowed it down is that the agglomeration is rerouting some of its major water pipes, and that's one of the possible routes. They want to build some redundancy into the system so that if there is a failure at one of the plants, we can still get water from one of the other plants. So we're served right now from the plant on Atwater. Well, this would allow us to then get water from the West Island and vice versa. And one of the possible routes would be along Broughton down the hill into Lachine. So until we have a clearer idea, it doesn't make sense to green the space only to have them dig it up afterwards. So we're still waiting for some clarification on what the potential path would be for that redundant water main to be put in. So thanks for your questions, Mr. Colin Broadhead. Next question comes from Kevin Brothaler, 27 Valentine North. Dear Mayor and City Councillors, I've had some questions about traffic policy. I've tried unsuccessfully to have them answered through email and can't get through. So I will try again here. As we're limited to 2 questions, I will be specific. What is the specific criteria the city uses to decide between speed bumps and bollards? It seems speed bumps are mostly used. Why insist on bollards instead of speed bump at the bottom of Valentine? There is a children's playground there. I know the other neighbors share my concern. As always, thank you for your time. Councillor Mazzoni, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Brothaler, for your question. I'll give you my answer, and then I'm going to add something to that in addition to my prepared remarks. So our traffic calming policy specifies that traffic calming measures are to be implemented when 85th percentile speeds are measured at 10 kilometers or more than the posted speed limit. For speed humps, we also have additional complications such as the required signage and pre-signage, possible issues with local geographical constraints, such as private driveways that are in proximity, as we can never really get a speed hump near them. In addition to the fact that these speed humps are not recommended on inclined roads, and I've spoken about that in previous meetings. And this is due to drainage and possible ice damming during winters when snowbanks are or on the side of the roads. So as a result of that, we looked to the bollards. And what we did empirically, because I know you've asked me this question again privately, and so I'm going to put this out very publicly to you. Empirically, we conducted a speed survey in June of 2021 with the bollards in place. We placed a discrete radar speed counter to monitor the street for 7 days, 24 hours a day, and we measured an 85th percentile speed of 34 kilometers per hour. This number does not exceed 10 kilometers or more and is actually in line with streets where we have speed humps already in place. Now, I just want to answer this one question with a view to answering other questions that we get about speed and speed humps and bollards and speed bumps. You know, we've put these bollards in place and they're working. And I understand that you've asked the question to me privately many times. It's not that you haven't unsuccessfully answered, is that the answer has not been satisfactory to you. The bollards are in place. The committee made that recommendation. And as I told you, and I'll say publicly to everybody listening to this, if ever we're at a point in time where we saw that it wasn't working and that there was either an impediment to traffic, that it wasn't a traffic calming measure whatsoever, it was actually making things worse, rest assured, we would be the first to remove that. But seeing that they work, I see no reason to remove them. I see no reason to make that recommendation to council, and I see no reason to reconvene the TSC on this very specific issue. I've answered this question as many times as I can, and this will literally be my last pronouncement on that. I thank you very much for your question, Mr. Brothaler.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brothaler. Thank you very much, Councilor Mazzoni. Next question comes from Brandon Hellfield at 73 Strathern. Hi there. I'd like to know what council intends to do to make the intersection at Westminster and Sherbrooke more safe. It is an incredibly dangerous intersection with many near misses daily. This also makes the intersection at Westminster Milner dangerous too, as many drivers are angry or exhibit road rage from the previous intersection. Many years ago, Montreal-West was thinking about putting a traffic light, but added the stop sign instead. Surely the town puts the safety of the residents and school children ahead of the cost to build a couple of traffic lights. Thank you for your time. And thank you for your question, Mr. Hellfield. And that's clearly a question of not having all the facts in place. We did have a study done by traffic engineers, not by residents, about whether it would be effective to have a light at the corner of Westminster Sherbrooke. And in fact, the traffic engineers clearly said to us that it would actually make the situation worse. It would make traversing the tracks take longer, and it would make the situation you're referring to, exhibiting road rage, even more pronounced. So it's not a question of the town not wanting to spend the money. We actually mandated the traffic engineers, and they were firmly against recommending any kind of a traffic light there. In terms of making the intersection safer, I'll repeat what Councillor Mazzoni said before. This is something that EXO is undertaking as well as part of the work that they're doing at the train station. They're going to be removing parts of the sidewalk on the south side of Sherbrooke, so that people will walk on the north side of Sherbrooke and already be on the right side of the sidewalk. And they're going to be painting in a proper crosswalk at the corner of Sherbrooke and Westminster. In terms of the stoplight on the other side of the tracks, unfortunately, the traffic engineers were hit and miss on that one. They're not so happy with it because it's a little bit on the downslope, so it's not always visible, and it gives people a false sense of security. They also understand that it's maybe not the safest thing to remove it. It's a complicated intersection because people that have crossed the tracks and want to make, for an example, a left turn onto Broughton, they have the right to do that because they've already made their stop. And unfortunately, people who are coming north on Westminster and are stopped at Avon don't realize that those people have cleared the stop on the other side and actually have priority. So it's a question of everybody continuing to be vigilant and we'll continue along with EXO and our partners with SPVM, making small changes and adjustment to do the best that we can to increase the safety at that stop sign, at that intersection. Thank you very much for your question, Brandon Hellfield. Next question comes from Susan Superstein, 242 Ballantyne North. Why can we not repair sidewalk hole with tar, etc., until we can repair properly? Had an accident last Friday. See email I sent to town, dangerous. And I guess the second question, who examines tree health? One at the corner of Parkside and Ballantyne is dying. Councillor Torres, if you could address the questions, please. You're on mute, Councillor Torres.
Thank you.
Has to be at least once in the meeting, right, Councillor Torres? At least once in the meeting.
I have to do it so Dino can laugh. It's the joke of the evening. Okay. Hi, Susan. Thank you for sending this, bringing this to our attention. I will send it to Public Works right away. We do repair the sidewalk with tar on Ballantyne and Brook, as you know, because we cannot repair it properly. It might be, I don't know the reason why they had a hole there, because they did a lot of patching this summer. So, but I will bring it up again and make sure that they do. As in regards to your second question, who examines tree health, we recently did an inventory and we are aware of this health of all our trees. However, these might have deteriorated after the inventory was done. So also I'm going to send it to Public Works and make sure that they look after. If it is dying, We might need a second opinion. We might need to bring an arborist and then either trim it or cut it down. They will decide what's best for the tree. So thank you for bringing these issues forward, and I will look after them. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Torres, and thank you for your question, Susan Superstein. Next question from Mayanne Burridge, 29 Wolseley Avenue South. I live near Royal West Academy. When we bought the house, we knew we could expect noise from the school, which is perfectly okay. A problem has arisen since the town started renting the field to soccer teams and began doing town festivities in the field. At no time did the town consult with neighboring residences about the uptick in noise and traffic. The soccer people are noisy and disrespectful regarding parking. My driveway is frequently blocked. Festivities and soccer should be held on the other side of the field, near Easton, not near Ainsley. Can all events be on the Easton side? Councillor Yulin?
Right. Thanks, Mayanne. Thanks for your question. So the town doesn't actually rent the field. Essentially, that's the CRA that holds its soccer practices and matches at the Royal West Field. So I'm sorry, and that's really been for the last 10 or 12 years they've been doing that. It's not a recent thing. I'm going to suggest that if you've got some issues with the CRA's use of that field, that you contact them directly. You can do that through our website. They already have their own website, or give them a phone call and let them know if you're having some difficulties with some of their participants and noise and such. And maybe they would be willing to move down further towards Easton. But my memory of their use of that field is that they use pretty well the whole field for the soccer. With respect to our events, though, we have started, well, I shouldn't say started, we used the Royal West Field a couple of times this summer for a couple of our events, because in COVID, you're only allowed to have a certain number of people at these events legally. And so we needed an enclosure that had a gate around it, basically a fence around it. We could let people in, a certain number of people. And so we used really the only place to do that outdoors was the Royal West Field. So we held it in the Royal West Field as opposed to other places in town. And I hope that it's the last summer that we're going to have to use that field, because I'm hoping the pandemic is finished. But if we do have to use that field again, I will suggest to the Recreation Department that perhaps we can have the festivities a little further towards Easton, so it's not close to the residences and doesn't cause a bother to you. Thank you very much for your question, and I'll certainly pass that along to Recreation.
Thank you very much, Councillor Yulin, and thank you for your question, Mayanne Burridge. Last question comes from Karen Donnelly at 195 Wolseley North. When bylaw changes are considered that significantly affect Montreal-West residences and business, can council be more forthright in describing these changes in layman terms? I read the August 13th e-bulletin, but it was not clear that it could mean the removal of the Stratton parking lot. I searched the Montreal-West website to find out what MA6 meant and could not find a definition. Only after locating some color coding on annexed map was I able to get a gist of it. Zoning acronyms may be understood by council, but when proposing serious changes to residents, there should be more clarity. Thank you. Councillor Feeney, if you could address the question, please.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much for your question, Karen. And it's similar to a question that was asked a little bit earlier this evening by Tracy Swim. So your point is well taken. It's not always easy to understand this, even as counselors, sometimes I will say. And so we will endeavor to be much clearer in the future and more descriptive of these things. And even if we send a fast e-bulletin, we can use the website to describe it a little bit further to make it clearer for everyone. So what we do want, I mean, clearly is an understanding by our residents and input for our residents. So the more information we give them, the better. So we will endeavor to do that more in the future. Thank you very much for your question.
Thank you very much, Councillor Feeney, and thank you for your question, Karen Donnelly. So that puts the end to our first question period. We're going to move back to the agenda. Number 9, contrat et greffe. Amendement de la résolution 2021-06-28-006 tarif de rémunération personne électorale. Si je peux avoir quelqu'un pour proposer la motion, s'il vous plaît.
Oui, Monsieur le maire. Alors, je propose, Monsieur le maire, de modifier la résolution /union 2021-0628-006 en retirant l'indemnité de formation pour un responsable de salle et en ajoutant les indemnités suivantes. Pour la formation de dépouillement, des votes le jour de scrutin, chacune va recevoir 15 $. Pour la formation des situations particulières durant la votation, une autre fois, chacune va recevoir 15 $.
Merci, le conseiller Mazzoni. Je peux avoir l'appui, s'il vous plaît?
Oui.
L'appui.
Oui, je l'appuie.
Merci, la conseillère Torres. Tout en faveur, s'il vous plaît?
Oui, Monsieur.
Oui.
Merci. Just so everybody knows, that's just a little amendment in what we'll be paying for people who work during the elections, okay? Now we move on to administration and finances. Approval of disbursements from June 26th to August 27th, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I move that the list of accounts payable from June 26th to August 27th, 2021, totaling $1,476,221.26 be approved and paid as listed.
Thank you very much. Councillor Feeney, can I have a seconder, please?
Mr. Mayor, I second that resolution.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mazzoni, all in favor, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Délégation des pouvoirs pour le mois de juillet et août de 2021. Je peux avoir quelqu'un pour proposer, s'il vous plaît, la résolution.
C'est terrible. Oui, Monsieur le maire, je propose que soient approuvés les rapports du directeur général concernant l'exercice des pouvoirs délégués en vertu du règlement numéro 2005-002 pour le mois de juillet et août 2021.
Merci, la conseillère Torres. Je peux avoir l'appui, s'il vous plaît?
Oui, je l'appuie.
Merci, la conseillère Yolande. Tout en faveur, s'il vous plaît.
Oui.
Merci. Number 11, Urban Department, 11A, Site Planning Projects and Architectural Integration Program. Councillor Feeney, please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I move first to acknowledge receipt of the minutes of a meeting held by the Planning Advisory Committee, PAC, on August the 25th, 2021. And second, to approve as presented under the SPAIP, the following plans submitted to this meeting in accordance with the recommendations of the PAC as outlined in the minutes. 19 Fenwick, replacement of the front door. 43 Curzon, replacement of 3 windows and a door. 75 to 77 Roxton, replacement of 2 front doors, a balcony door, a side door, and 2 windows. 314 Northview, construction of a universal access ramp on the side of the building. 3, to approve with conditions under the SPAIP the following plans submitted to this meeting in accordance with the recommendations of the PAC as outlined in the minutes. 48 to 54 Westminster North, installation of a commercial sign. 102 to 104 Westminster North, resurfacing of the front stairs and landing, removal of the lower walls and replacement of the railings. 125 Westminster North, replacement of the front porch fascia, decking, stairs, and railings. And finally, 4th, to defer the examination of the following plans to a next meeting of the council in accordance with the recommendations of the PAC as outlined in the minutes. 325 Brock North, replacement of front stairs, landing, and railings. 83 Ballantyne North, renovation of the front vestibule and replacement of stucco on the entire house, replacement of front stairs, landing, and railings, as well as the replacement of windows and doors.
Thank you very much. Councillor Feeney, can I have a seconder, please?
I second that.
Thank you very much. Councillor Yulin, all in favor, please?
Aye.
Thank you very much. A minor exemption request for 63 Ainsley. Councillor Feeney, if you could just give us a short précis, please.
Yes, this is a minor exemption for a front veranda. It's not a new veranda. It dates back, but this is for a real estate transaction. So what happens over the course of the years, bylaws can change and setbacks can change. So this was built some time ago, and under the current bylaws, it is now derogatory. but by a very small amount, less than a meter. So PAC agreed to recommend that we accept this minor exemption.
Thank you very much, Councillor Feeney. If you can move the motion, please. If you can make the motion, please.
Yes,
Oh, sorry, it's being moved by Councillor Feeney. I'm sorry, Councillor Yulin. I'm sorry. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you. I move that the plans and request submitted to the August 4th, 2021 meeting of the Planning Advisory Committee be approved in accordance with bylaws 2020-002 and G180005 with the following minor exemption from paragraph 8 of section 4.1.10 of the zoning bylaw regarding the immovable located at 63 Ainsley in zone RB-7 to normalize the encroachment of an existing veranda in the front setback, despite the fact that such an encroachment is not allowed pursuant to the relevant schedule of uses and standards in that zone. The consequence being to allow the veranda be located at 4.36 meters from the property line instead of a minimum of 4.57 meters, as for the main building, thereby reducing the requirement by 0.21 meters.
Thank you very much, Councillor Yulin. Can I have a seconder, please?
Yes, I second that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Feeney. All in favor, please.
Aye.
Thank you very much. So I think that's it. We get to the bottom of the agenda. We go to the second question period, and I have one question that's being asked, and it's from Matthew Sherrard at 139 Brock South. My questions on Parmalat Factory were not answered in the first period. Repeated here. Please respond. Thanks. What is the risk associated with this equipment that would be moved closer to Montreal-West residents? What noise and other impacts will this large industrial equipment have on Montreal-West? Mr. Sherrard, I have no idea what impact this could have. We will find out. I have no idea what equipment exactly is being moved, how close it's being moved, what impact it could possibly have. Off the top of my head, it's going to be louder. I understand that. How much louder is it going to be? Is there going to be some other kind of potential risk? We don't know that answer. That's why we said in the first question period, we will try and get some more details from the NDG Côte-Neige Borough to find out what exactly the plans are. Thank you very much for your question, Mr. Matthew Sherrard. So that's it, folks. If I could have somebody, je peux avoir quelqu'un pour faire la levée de la séance, s'il vous plaît.
Oui, Monsieur le maire, je propose de lever la séance.
Merci. Je peux avoir l'appui, s'il vous plaît.
Je l'appuie. Appuie.
Merci, la conseillère Torres. Tout en faveur, s'il vous plaît.
Oui.
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 Merci. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you for sending us in your questions. And have a good evening. Bonsoir à tous. On se verra en septembre. Merci.